Picture a world where crowns were forged not just from gold, but from blood, so tightly bound by family ties that it wove a tapestry of tragedy. In the courts of medieval and early modern Europe, royal women were queens, mothers, and pawns in a deadly game of dynastic chess. Their marriages to cousins, uncles, and nephews were meant to secure empires, but instead they birthed heartbreak, deformity, and decline. Tonight, by the glow of this flickering fire, we unravel the hidden truths of these women's lives' stories of love, loss, and resilience buried beneath the weight of inbreeding. Why did they endure? What mysteries linger in their genes? Before you settle in, if you enjoy this cozy journey through history, a like and subscribe would mean the world to us. It helps us keep bringing you more relaxing bedtime stories filled with mystery, wonder, and warmth. Settle in, let the flames soothe you, and let's uncover the secrets of these forgotten queens. Imagine a family tree, not a proud oak with spreading branches, but a tangled knot, looping back on itself until the lines blur. This was the reality for Europe's royal dynasties: Habsburgs, Capetians, Trastamaras, and more, who married within their own bloodlines to keep power, wealth, and thrones intact. From the 12th to the 17th centuries, these marriages weren't about love or choice. They were strategy, pure and ruthless. The goal? To ensure no outsider could claim the family's lands or titles. But this strategy came at a cost, and it was the women queens, princesses, and regents who paid the heaviest price. Their bodies carried the burden of tangled genes. Their hearts bore the weight of duty, and their lives were shaped by a world that saw them as vessels for heirs, not people with dreams. Let's start with why this happened. In medieval Europe, power was land and land was power. Marrying outside the family risked splitting estates or diluting divine claims to rule. The Habsburgs, who ruled swaths of Europe from Spain to Austria, were masters of this game. Their motto, "Let others wage war." "You happy Austria, marry," wasn't just a quip, it was a blueprint. But to marry your cousin or uncle, you needed permission from the church, which frowned on such unions as incestuous. Enter the papal dispensation, a golden ticket from the Pope himself, allowing royals to bend the rules. These dispensations were handed out like candy to keep alliances tight, and the church, ever eager for royal favor, obliged. By the 15th century, over 80% of Habsburg marriages were consanguineous first cousins, uncle-niece, even double first cousins. Fun fact, the inbreeding coefficient of Charles II of Spain, a product of this system, was 0.254 higher than if his parents had been siblings. That's how tight the knot was tied. But what did this mean for the women? Let's meet three who lived in this web of bloodlines, their stories revealing the human cost of dynastic ambition. First, there's Joanna of Castile, born in 1479, known to history as Joanna the Mad. Her parents, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, were second cousins, uniting Spain through their marriage. Joanna was married off to her cousin Philip the Handsome, a Habsburg prince, to cement an alliance between Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. Their love was real rare for royal marriages, but it came with pain. Joanna bore 6 children, but her pregnancies were plagued by miscarriages and stillbirths. a common thread in inbred dynasties. When Philip died young, Joanna's grief was so profound she reportedly carried his coffin across Spain, refusing to let him go. Her father and son used her despair to label her mad, locking her away in a convent for decades. Was she truly insane, or was her madness a mix of grief, political manipulation, and perhaps genetic fragility? Modern historians lean toward the latter, noting that inbreeding can amplify mental health issues like depression or anxiety. Joanna's story isn't just tragic, it's a mystery. One will unravel as we go. Next, we have Blanche of Castile, born in 1188, a woman of steel in a world of fragile bloodlines. Married to her third cousin, Louis VIII of France, Blanche was a Capetian queen who ruled as regent for her young son, Louis X, with a mind sharper than any sword. But her body told a different story. Blanche suffered from chronic migraines and frailty, conditions that some scholars link to the genetic toll of repeated cousin marriages in her lineage. Despite this, she governed France with unmatched skill, fending off rebellious nobles and securing her son's throne. Her resilience shines through, a trait we'll see again and again in these women. Blanche's life shows us that even when your body betrays you, your spirit can still command empires. But it also raises a question. How much of her suffering was genetic? And how much was the crushing weight of duty? Then there's Eleanor of Portugal, born in 1434, who married her uncle, Frederick III of Habsburg, at just 18. This uncle-niece marriage was meant to tighten the Habsburg grip on the Holy Roman Empire, but it left Eleanor isolated in Vienna's cold, scheming court. She bore multiple children, but her health crumbled, and she died at 33, possibly from porphyria, a hereditary disorder causing pain, sensitivity to light, and mental disturbances. Porphyria ran through royal bloodlines, and Eleanor's symptoms, described as strange fits by chroniclers, fit the pattern. Her story is a stark reminder of what these women endured, not just the physical toll of childbirth, but the hidden damage of genes turned against them by their own family's choices. What were the early signs of this genetic unraveling? Inbreeding increases the chance of inheriting 2 copies of harmful recessive genes, leading to disorders that medieval medicine couldn't explain. The Habsburgs, for instance, became infamous for their Habsburg jaw mandibular prognathism, a jutting chin that grew more pronounced with each generation. It wasn't just cosmetic. It caused pain, difficulty eating, and speech issues. By the 16th century, portraits of Habsburg women like Joanna show subtle signs of this trait, a visible mark of their lineage's obsession with purity. Infant mortality was another grim marker. In some Habsburg lines, up to 50% of children died before age 5, far higher than the general population. Miscarriages and stillbirths haunted royal nurseries, with women like Joanna and Eleanor losing children before they could even hold them. Medieval doctors blamed these losses on divine will, bad air, or even witchcraft, oblivious to the genetic truth we now understand. Let's pause for a moment to consider an old tradition that fueled this tragedy: the belief in divine bloodlines. Royals saw themselves as chosen by God, their blood too sacred to mingle with commoners. This idea stretched back to ancient Egypt, where pharaohs like Cleopatra married their siblings to preserve their divine status. In Europe, the Church reinforced this by granting dispensations, framing royal inbreeding as a holy exception. But this tradition wasn't just a quirk, it was a trap. Women were expected to produce healthy heirs, yet their bodies were set up to fail by the very marriages designed to secure the dynasty. The irony is brutal. The quest for eternal power sowed the seeds of decline. Now, let's dive into a mystery that lingers from Joanna's story. Was her madness truly genetic, or was it a convenient label slapped on a grieving woman to steal her power? Her father, Ferdinand, and son, Charles V, both benefited from her confinement, ruling in her name while she languished in a convent. Some historians argue her behavior obsessive mourning. Refusal to eat wasn't madness, but profound loss, possibly worsened by genetic predispositions to depression. Inbreeding can amplify such traits, as recessive genes for mental health issues surface more often. But there's another layer: misogyny. Powerful women like Joanna were threats in a male-dominated world. Calling her mad was an easy way to sideline her. This mystery invites us to question how history writes its women. Were they broken by their genes, or by the men who controlled their stories? What can we learn from these women today? Their lives teach us about the cost of duty over health. Joanna, Blanche, and Eleanor were bound by expectations underscored to marry, to bear heirs, to uphold empires no matter the toll on their bodies or minds. It's a lesson that echoes in our own time, when we're often pushed to prioritize work, family, or society's demands over our well-being. These women's resilience, though, is what stands out. Blanche ruled France through pain. Joanna loved fiercely despite loss, and Eleanor endured a foreign court with grace. They remind us that strength isn't the absence of struggle, but the courage to push through it. And here's a touch of humor to lighten the mood. Imagine a family reunion where everyone's your cousin, uncle, and nephew. Awkward doesn't even begin to cover it. As we close this first chapter, think of these women not as distant figures in dusty history books, but as mothers, daughters, and sisters caught in a web not of their making. Their stories are a window into a world where love and power clashed, where genes and ambition intertwined, and where resilience shone through tragedy. The fire burns low now, casting its glow on the path ahead. In our next chapter, we'll meet the women who ruled despite broken bodies and hearts, and uncover how their choices shaped Europe's fate. For now, let the warmth of the flames carry you toward rest, and let these stories of courage linger in your dreams. By the glow of this flickering fire, we return to a world where royal women bore the weight of empires on their shoulders, and the burden of tangled bloodlines in their veins. In medieval and early modern Europe, the game of dynastic chess grew fiercer, with queens and princesses married to cousins and uncles to secure thrones. But each move tightened the knot of inbreeding, weaving a tapestry of tragedy that these women could not escape. Their stories are not just history, they're tales of love, sacrifice, and resilience that echo through time. Tonight, we step into the crucible of the 16th and 17th centuries, where the Habsburgs and their allies pushed inbreeding to its peak, and royal women paid the price in broken bodies and hearts. Settle in, let the fire's warmth soothe you, And let's uncover the hidden truths of these queens who ruled against the odds. In the 16th century, the Habsburgs were at the height of their power, their empire stretching from Spain to Austria, from the Americas to the Netherlands. But beneath the glitter of their crowns, a dangerous pattern tightened its grip: inbreeding. Over 80% of Spanish Habsburg marriages were consanguineous first cousins, uncle-niece, or even double first cousins, where siblings from one family married siblings from another. This wasn't just a family quirk. It was a deliberate strategy to keep power within the bloodline. The Habsburg motto, "Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry," was their playbook, but it was a gamble that began to fail. The inbreeding coefficient, a measure of genetic similarity, rose sharply. For Philip I, it was a modest 0.025. But by the time we reached Charles II a century later, it would hit 0.254, a level so high it rivaled the offspring of siblings. Fun fact, if your family tree looks more like a wreath, you're probably a Habsburg. But what did this mean for the women caught in this web? They were expected to marry, bear heirs, and uphold the dynasty, even as their bodies struggled under the genetic strain. Let's meet three women whose lives illuminate this crucible of duty and tragedy: Catherine of Aragon, Isabella of Portugal, and Anna of Austria. Their stories reveal not just the cost of inbreeding, but the strength it took to navigate a world that demanded everything from them. First, there's Catherine of Aragon, born in 1485, daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, the same parents who shaped Joanna of Castile's fate. Catherine was married twice, first to Arthur, Prince of Wales, then to his brother, Henry VIII of England, both alliances tying England to Spain's Trastamara and Habsburg bloodlines. Her marriages were strategic, but her fertility became a battleground. Catherine endured 7 pregnancies, but 6 ended in miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death. Only one child, Mary, survived. Modern geneticists suggest that inbreeding may have caused incompatibilities, increasing the risk of miscarriage. Catherine's health deteriorated with each loss, and her failure to produce a male heir led Henry to seek an annulment, sparking England's break from the Catholic Church. Yet Catherine's resilience was unshakable. She defended her marriage with fierce dignity, arguing her case before England's court in a display of intellect and courage. Her story isn't just about loss, it's about a woman who stood firm in a world that blamed her for what her genes couldn't deliver. Next, we have Isabella of Portugal, born in 1503, who married her double first cousin, Emperor Charles V. Their parents were siblings from both the Trastamara and Habsburg lines, making their union one of the tightest in royal history. Isabella was brilliant, serving as regent of Spain while Charles waged wars across Europe. But her personal life was a litany of pain. She suffered anxiety, chronic fatigue, and multiple stillbirths, delivering only 3 surviving children out of 7 pregnancies. At 35, she died from complications during childbirth, her body exhausted by the demands of dynasty and genetics. Some historians point to possible autoimmune disorders or porphyria, both linked to inbreeding, as factors in her decline. Isabella's story shows a woman of immense capability ruling Spain with a steady hand, yet trapped by a body that couldn't keep up with her spirit. Then there's Anna of Austria, born in 1549, who married her uncle, Philip II of Spain, in a union that epitomized Habsburg inbreeding. Anna was vibrant and cultured, but her role was to produce heirs for a dynasty already showing cracks. She bore 5 children, including the future Philip III, but her pregnancies were fraught with complications, and she died at 31, likely from an infection linked to childbirth. Her son Philip III was healthy enough, but his generation marked the beginning of intellectual decline in the Habsburgs, a sign of what was to come with Charles II. Anna's later years were spent retreating to a convent-like solitude, perhaps a quiet rebellion against the endless cycle of dynastic marriages. Her life raises a question. Did she seek escape from the pressure, or was her health already failing under the weight of her lineage? What was the genetic and social toll of these marriages? The Habsburg jaw-mandibular prognathism became a grim hallmark, growing more severe with each generation. In women like Isabella, it was subtle but present, causing discomfort and signaling deeper issues. By the time we reach Philip III, it was pronounced enough to affect speech and eating. Inbreeding also brought other horrors, hemophilia, which would later plague Queen Victoria's descendants, and porphyria, with its painful symptoms, likely affected women like Isabella. Mental health issues, too, surfaced more often: depression, anxiety, and possibly schizophrenia, though diagnosing across centuries is tricky. Joanna's madness and Anna's withdrawal hint at these struggles. But were they genetic or born of relentless pressure? Socially, these women faced blame for their fertility issues. Medieval and early modern courts often saw barrenness or sickly heirs as a woman's failure, ignoring the genetic contributions of both parents. Old tradition alert. Royal women were expected to pray and endure, their bodies treated as vessels for divine will, not as human beings with limits. Let's explore a mystery that swirls around Catherine of Aragon. Did her miscarriages trigger the English Reformation? Or was Henry VIII's ambition the true catalyst? Catherine's inability to produce a male heir pushed Henry to seek an annulment, leading to his break with Rome and the creation of the Church of England. But what if her genetic makeup, shaped by inbreeding, made healthy pregnancies harder? Studies suggest that consanguineous marriages increase miscarriage risks due to recessive gene mismatches. If Catherine had born a son, would England have stayed Catholic? It's a tantalizing what-if, blending biology with history's turning points. Catherine's story reminds us that small, personal tragedies like a lost child can reshape nations. What lessons can we draw from these women? Their lives mirror modern struggles with impossible expectations. Catherine, Isabella, and Anna were judged by their ability to produce heirs. Much like women today face pressure to juggle careers, families, or societal roles, their resilience shines through Catherine's defiance. Isabella's governance, Anna's quiet strength, but so does the cost. Inbreeding wasn't just a physical burden. It was a metaphor for systems that trap people in cycles of harm. We can learn to question traditions that prioritize legacy over health, whether it's a royal marriage or a modern demand to have it all. And for a touch of humor, if your family tree looks like a pretzel, maybe it's time to rethink the guest list for the royal wedding. As the flames cast their glow, we see these women not as distant queens, but as human beings who loved, ruled, and suffered under the weight of their bloodlines. Their stories are a testament to endurance, but also a warning of what happens when power trumps well-being. The Habsburgs' empire was vast, but its foundation was cracking, and these women felt the tremors first. In our final chapter, we'll witness the fall of the Spanish Habsburgs and the enduring legacy of these queens' strength. For now, let the fire's warmth cradle you, and let these stories of sacrifice and courage guide you toward a peaceful rest. As the fire's gentle glow dances before us, we step into the final chapter of a saga woven from blood and ambition. In medieval and early modern Europe, royal women carried the weight of dynasties through marriages that bound them to cousins, uncles, and nephews. These unions, meant to secure empires, instead unraveled them, leaving a trail of tragedy in their wake. Tonight, we witness the collapse of the Spanish Habsburgs, a dynasty undone by its own tangled bloodlines, and honor the women who endured its final days. Their stories of love, loss, and unyielding strength offer lessons that resonate across centuries. Settle in, let the fire's warmth cradle you, and let's uncover the hidden truths of these queens, whose legacies outlasted the thrones they served. By the late 17th century, the Habsburgs' empire was a colossus with feet of clay. Their strategy of inbreeding marrying within the family to preserve power had reached a breaking point. The Spanish Habsburgs, rulers of a global empire from Madrid to Mexico, were crumbling under the weight of their own genes. The inbreeding coefficient, a measure of genetic similarity, had climbed to catastrophic levels. For Charles II, born in 1661, it was 0.254 higher than if his parents had been siblings. His mother, Mariana of Austria, married her uncle, Philip IV, in a union that sealed the dynasty's fate. Charles, known as the Bewitched, was the ultimate consequence. Frail and fertile, barely able to speak or chew due to a grotesque Habsburg jaw. His death in 1700, childless, ended the Spanish Habsburg line and sparked the War of the Spanish Succession, a brutal conflict that redrew Europe's map from 1701 to 1714. Fun fact: Charles II's autopsy, likely exaggerated, claimed his body held not a drop of blood and a heart the size of a peppercorn. If nothing else, it shows how myths grew around the Habsburgs' decline. But this collapse wasn't just about one king. It was the culmination of centuries of pressure on royal women, whose bodies and spirits bore the brunt of inbreeding's toll. Let's meet three women who lived through this twilight. Mariana of Austria, Maria Theresa of Spain, and Isabella Clara Eugenia. Their lives reveal the final gasps of a dying dynasty and the resilience that carried them through. First, there's Mariana of Austria, born in 1634, who married her uncle, Philip IV of Spain. At 14, this uncle-niece marriage was a desperate bid to keep the Habsburg bloodline pure. Mariana bore 5 children, but only 2 survived infancy, including the frail Charles II. As regent after Philip's death, She faced a court rife with scheming nobles and a treasury drained by war. Her health suffered chronic fatigue and possible autoimmune issues, common in inbred lines, plagued her later years. Yet Mariana's strength lay in her tenacity, holding Spain together for her son, despite his obvious frailty. She must have known that the dynasty was doomed. Yet she fought on, a mother and queen trapped by duty. Her story is a haunting one, a woman who poured her life into a sinking ship, knowing the waves were closing in. Next, we have Maria Theresa of Spain, born in 1638, who married her double first cousin, Louis XIV of France. Their parents were siblings from both the Habsburg and Bourbon lines, making their union a genetic tangle. Maria Theresa was vibrant and cultured, but her life was marked by loss. Of her 6 children, only one survived to adulthood, and she endured chronic migraines and infections, possibly linked to inbreeding-related disorders like porphyria. As Queen of France, she was overshadowed by Louis's grandeur and his mistresses, her Spanish heritage making her an outsider in Versailles. Yet she carried herself with grace, supporting charities and enduring her losses with quiet strength. Her story shows a woman caught between 2 dynasties, Habsburg and Bourbon her body, paying the price for their ambition. Then there's Isabella Clara Eugenia, born in 1566, a beacon of defiance in the Habsburgs' decline. Married to her cousin, Archduke Albert, she ruled the Spanish Netherlands with brilliance, turning a war-torn region into a cultural hub. Despite her cousin marriage, Isabella was childless, perhaps a mercy given the genetic risks. Her intelligence and diplomacy shone through, negotiating peace and fostering art, even as Spain's empire faltered. Unlike Mariana or Maria Theresa, Isabella escaped the physical toll of inbreeding, but she couldn't escape its shadow. Her childlessness meant the Habsburg line passed to others, yet her legacy as a ruler endured. Isabella's story is one of adaptability, a woman who carved out power in a world crumbling around her. What was the toll of this final era? The Habsburg jaw, now a caricature in Charles II, made eating and speaking a struggle. Geneticists point to a host of disorders, hemophilia, which later ravaged Queen Victoria's descendants, and porphyria, with its painful symptoms, likely affected Maria Theresa. Mental health issues persisted. To Charles II's intellectual disability was stark, but women like Mariana also showed signs of depression or anxiety, perhaps amplified by recessive genes. Infant mortality remained grim. Mariana's 5 pregnancies yielded only 2 survivors. A pattern echoed across royal nurseries. Socially, these women faced relentless pressure to produce heirs, yet the blame for failure fell on them, not the men who shared their genes. Old tradition alert, the belief in divine bloodlines persisted, with royals seen as God's chosen, their inbreeding framed as preserving sacred purity. But by the 17th century, whispers of doubt grew. Courtiers noticed the sickly heirs, even if they didn't understand genetics. The Habsburg collapse had ripple effects beyond Spain. The War of the Spanish Succession, triggered by Charles II's death, pitted Europe's powers against each other, with France's Bourbons claiming the Spanish throne. But inbreeding's legacy didn't end there. Queen Victoria, a Habsburg descendant through her mother, spread hemophilia through Europe's royal houses, affecting the Romanovs and others. By the 18th century, dynasties began to shift, marrying further afield as scientific awareness grew. Gregor Mendel's work on genetics in the 1860s would later explain why recessive genes, hidden in diverse bloodlines, surface with devastating effects when families marry too closely. The Habsburgs' fall was a warning, and Europe's royals slowly heeded it. Let's linger on a mystery. Could the Habsburgs have survived with different marriage policies, or was their collapse inevitable? Some argue that marrying outside the family, as the Bourbons began to do, could have diluted harmful genes and strengthened the dynasty. Others say the Habsburgs' vast empire was unsustainable. With or without inbreeding wars, debt, and rebellion were already eroding their power. The truth likely lies in both. Biology and politics conspired against them. This question invites us to ponder chance versus choice in history. Did these women, like Mariana, see the end coming? Or did they hope their sacrifices would save the dynasty? What lessons can we take from these women today? Their resilience is a beacon. Mariana held Spain together through chaos. Maria Theresa endured loss with grace, and Isabella ruled with brilliance despite a childless marriage. They faced systemic flaws, genetic, political, cultural, yet found ways to act with courage. It's a reminder that we, too, can navigate broken systems, whether it's a toxic workplace or societal pressure. Their stories also warn us against clinging to harmful traditions. The Habsburgs' obsession with pure bloodlines mirrors modern traps holding on to outdated habits or expectations that harm us. Diversity in genes and ideas is strength, a lesson as vital now as it was then. And for a touch of humor, when your family tree is a circle, maybe it's time to branch out literally. As the flames fade, we see these women not as relics of a lost era, but as human beings who loved, fought, and endured. Their tragedies, miscarriages, sickly children, broken bodies were the price of a dynasty's ambition. Yet their strength outlasted the crowns they wore. The Habsburgs fell, but their legacy lives in the lessons of resilience, the warning of harmful traditions, and the power of human spirit. As you drift toward sleep, let the fire's warmth carry you, and let these stories of courage linger in your dreams, reminding us that even in tragedy, humanity endures.